Hey, looks like we're here. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Energy Realities Podcast. My name's Stu Turley, President and CEO of the Sandstone Group. It is not only Monday, it is my favorite day of the week because I've got three fantastic podcast co-hosts sitting here from all over the world, and we have got a clown show for you. I mean, we have got an unbelievable Energy Realities podcast with you. First up, around the corner, we have Irina Slav. She is the energy queen of the world. And I mean, I love your Substack, Irina. It is absolutely fantastic. Everybody must go subscribe right now. And if not, we're going to send out David Blackman to beat him up. So welcome, Irina. How are you in Bulgaria today?
Great. Winter is coming.
I noticed your sweater.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Now, how's your cat? Does your cat live outside during the winter?
No, he doesn't, but he would like to spend as much time outside as he could. Even though it's been raining today, he wanted to be outside to protect us from, intruders. He's a dog in disguise.
That is my kind of cat. And next around the corner, we have the David Blackman. I mean, not just a David Blackman. I mean, he is the David Blackman. Energy Absurdity over there on X. And I love following him there. And his Substack is blackman.substack.com, I believe. Is that correct, David?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the plug. That's great.
I'll tell you, you are one of the rare animals in the world that speak the truth around energy. And you and I have something in common. We both have interviewed Chris Wright. And so that's pretty cool. What is going on in your world?
Yeah, well, I'm hoping to get another interview with him, although it's probably pretty hard for him to free up any time these days. It's, once you get a nomination like that, you just hit the ground running and your hair's on fire all the time. He's going to be a great energy secretary. And, today I didn't have anything to write about Mr. Wright. So I wrote about Landman and Tommy Norris and all the characters I've known in my life, just like Tommy Norris. There's a lot of them in the oil patch.
Well, I'm writing a paper right now on how we should it's time to kill the Jones Act, and it would help Hawaii with emissions by being able to import our own LNG. And I'm also writing on other things that would help get rid of the ethanol. And Tammy, I have a few questions on gas mileage on that. So when I write these papers, I'm going to be getting them to Chris, and maybe David, we can all get Chris on here to talk about things like that.
That would be tough.
Anyway. Oh, it'd be fantastic. And Tammy Nemeth. I mean, this is a Tammy Nemeth. It is the Nemeth Report, Tammy Nemeth. How are you today, Tammy?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thanks so much for plugging the podcast there, the NemethReport.com. That's awesome.
Oh, I'll tell you what, it is fun. I've actually listened to it. It's a good show. What's up with that?
Oh, always great interviews with some really smart people. So it's always really fun to do.
Isn't that neat? That's the only reason I look good is because of my guests. Now, I'll tell you what, let's get rolling here. And as we go through this, Tammy, you had brought up some of the energy policies in Canada, and I found that I used X and created today's artwork. And I said, give me politicians in Canada. And it came back with this. So I love Grok on X. I thought it was pretty funny. So what were you thinking when you came up with the topic for today?
Well, I mean, Canada's been faced with a lot of different policy initiatives from the Trudeau government, the Liberal government in Canada over, the past 9 years. And what's interesting is that when Justin Trudeau's dad was prime minister back in 1980, they had put all of these energy policies into one package called the National Energy Program. And it was a disaster. Everybody hated it, except, of course, people in Ontario because it lowered their prices. But it really created a huge divide. But because it was in one package, people could target it. And it was a lightning rod for lots of different things that were going on. So the people behind Justin Trudeau got a little bit smarter, and they've been rolling out all of these separate policies so that it's very difficult to just hone in on, oh my gosh, this is all bad, like the Inflation Reduction Act or something. Instead, it's like all of these different little policies. And this morning, I just wrote down 10, and there's more. And it's like an Impact Assessment Act, which changed how approvals were done for any kind of big project. So basically, they call it the No Pipelines Act, because there's no way you would ever get approval for another pipeline in Canada. It's just so onerous and everything else. Then we have clean electricity standards. Even though it's the electricity is the responsibility of the provinces, Canada decided, no, you know what? The federal government's going to tell provinces what to do. So they brought in those, which basically gets rid of coal and natural gas. Then they announced just the other day an emissions cap on oil and gas production in Canada. And they were bragging because they did this at COP29. We're the only major oil and gas producing country to do this. Yeah, because it's stupid. So they have to reduce oil and gas production emissions 35% by 2030. So we have 5 years to lower emissions by a third. Good luck. And then the EV mandate, where they have sales targets and everything else like the UK, and punishments and so on. Ottawa also is spending $100 billion on an EV strategy. And, you know, part of that is paying for Northvolt, which is now going out of business, paying for all of these different things. Then there's a net zero building code. They designated all plastic as toxic. And then it got taken to court. Court said, that's pretty vague. What do you mean? Not all plastics are toxic. So then the government's appealing that. So all that's crazy. They set up a plastics registry. They're behind this UN plastics agreement that fell apart yesterday. They want a partial cap and trade system, biodiversity regulations. The list goes on. That's what's happening in Canada. And then we have Trump saying 25% tariff.
Yeah.
On all Canadian stuff unless they get the border and stuff under control. So what happened? Justin Trudeau, who hates Trump, flies down to Mar-a-Lago, stays over, has dinner on Thanksgiving, stays over, and is, you know, trying to smooth things over. Yeah, we'll take care of the border. But meanwhile, there's all of these other energy things on the table that are just a nightmare for Canadians. So my rant's done for the day.
No, it's not. That was so good. Go, Tammy, go. Okay, this just came in from a person watching on my X channel. Oh, that's me.
Oh, wait,
I vote that would be me. I vote the United States throw the UN out of the US and pulls out of the UN. The UN needs to go away. Did I just say that?
What does that have to do with Canada, Stu?
Yeah,
But Canada should do the same thing.
Well, the reason for that is because Tammy was bringing up the UN's climate thing that just failed, and it is absolutely horrific on Canada. The UN is absolutely a demonic institution that needs to go away. Sorry, Tammy, I'm trying to cheer you on, and David's over there putting a big Eeyore on me.
Every time Canada has an ambassador or whatever to the UN, it's usually a former leader of the Socialist Party, which tells you something about the UN. And so then you have these people in power who are closet socialists. Sometimes they wear it on their sleeve, and they're the ones who are in charge of Canada's environmental climate policy. And they're happy to go to the UN and say, oh, look, these multilateral institutions are saying we should make these changes and support us. So, yes, we should do it. And regular Canadians are like, what? This is stupid.
Yeah.
Irina, if you were a world leader and you wanted to visit with somebody, would you arrange to hide your airplane and go to Mar-a-Lago when everybody's tracking your airplane? I saw that on X. I thought that was absolutely a hoot.
Is
So
that what Trudeau did?
yeah, Trudeau
Right.
didn't announce it, did not go do anything. And then I found it on X. Somebody's like, Trudeau's going to Mar-a-Lago. And all of a sudden, within 15 minutes, he liked it so much, he stayed 2 days.
Yeah.
Wow, it must have been tough to talk to the president-elect. No, great summary, Tammy. It's wonderful. I remembered someone on X. I posted something about Canada, about pipelines. I don't remember, but it was critical of the Trudeau government. And this guy comes in comments that this is a very pro-oil and pro-gas government, and that's bad because they bought the Trans Mountain project and they approved some other, the Coastal Gas Link or something. And this proves that they are, in fact, very much in favor of oil and gas. And okay, so there are
We'd
people
all like to go to Mar-a-Lago.
think like that. So these people feel like the Trudeau government is not doing enough to kill the oil and gas industry of Canada.
Right.
Well, they
That's a
can't say that
very
now with the
scary
emissions
thought.
cap.
Say
No,
again?
You know, 'cause
What was that, Tammy?
I
About
said
the
they
emissions?
can't say that now with the oil and gas emissions cap and all
Okay.
the other things.
Oh, they will. They will probably want the whole industry to be completely killed with one single blow. What's this reduction? I mean, as you've said repeatedly, the Canadian oil and gas producers have been that exemplary in their work to reduce their emissions. But it's never enough. But it seems that the government likes the revenues that come into the federal budget from oil and gas production.
Yes, because they use it to give transfer payments to Quebec. So
That's nice.
yeah, 60% of the transfer payments go to Quebec.
Why?
Well, of course. Well, of course.
It's how it's set up, and the Western provinces wanted to renegotiate, as it's supposed to be renegotiated every 5 or 6 years. And I think it was last year Trudeau just arbitrarily said, no, we're not renegotiating, we're keeping it the way it is. So the money, it's really kind of one of these things, the stupid Canadian things, but they take the money, then they redistribute it to the provinces that are supposedly have not. And they consider Quebec a have not province.
Why is it so special? Because it's predominantly French speaking, or why is it special?
Yeah, good question. Why is it special?
Yeah, the seat of power is in Quebec. My favorite line about Trudeau's trip to Mar-a-Lago was the guy on X that commented that Trump invited Trudeau down to Mar-a-Lago to reestablish open relations with the Castro government in Cuba.
Yeah, I saw that.
I just thought that was I wish I'd have thought of it, frankly. I was just mad I didn't think of it first.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
That made my day.
Anyway, Canada is just, I mean, really, when you get down to it, Canada's policies don't look a lot different than the Biden administration. Luckily, we got the Biden administration going out of power now. And 12 of the last 16 years of our government have been spent going down this mad trail of climate alarmism. And, Canada's doing a lot of things that go further than what the Biden administration managed to do. But by the same token, Justin Trudeau appears to be in a lot of trouble, right? And maybe headed for the ash heap of history himself. If we ever get around to those national elections next year in Canada, hopefully that'll happen. But my question, I guess, for Tammy is this guy, what's his name? I don't know how to pronounce the last name.
Pierre Poilievre?
Pierre Poilievre. Would he be materially different on energy and climate policy than Trudeau, do you think?
I think
Because I
so.
hear he's kind of a mixed bag on all this stuff. And
Yeah, I
just,
mean, I forgot one of the things when I was listing off the different stuff that Canada does, I forgot the carbon tax.
yeah, the carbon.
So, that's something that increases every year until it'll be like some ludicrous amount by 2030, 2040, whatever. And he said his whole campaign or policy platform is axe the tax. So, he would get rid of the carbon tax. And I like what you said about what Canada's been doing has been very similar to what the Biden administration has been doing. And there's always this kind of idea that Canada should be in alignment with whatever the United States is doing, just because it is so huge and it's our biggest trading partner, and it just makes things easier for businesses if we're more in alignment with policies. And so if one could make the argument, well, Canada was behaving in such a manner that's more in alignment with what the United States was doing under Biden, but that doesn't fit with what Trump was trying to do, right? So what this means going forward, there's a lot of people saying, well, we should be more in alignment with what the United States is going to do under Trump. I don't know. Like, if that's possible if Poilievre is elected, but it's unclear if he would have a full majority. It could still be in a minority position and yet not have enough of the other parties supporting what the conservatives want to do. I'm concerned it could end up in a situation like Europe, where you have a more conservative party win, but they get outnumbered when it comes time to actually form the government, because there's more left-wing parties than there are conservative parties.
Yeah.
Have they started calling him a far-right extremist and ultra-nationalist? Oh, okay.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's the usual. And they keep saying he's Trump-like. Oh my gosh, he's Trump-like.
As if
He's
that's
like
something
the
bad
most
right
unlike.
now.
That's a bad thing in Canada. Yeah.
Yeah, dispositionally, he is absolutely nothing like Trump. He is one of the most soft-spoken individuals I've ever seen, but he's very witty and obviously very intelligent. People, I get a lot of complaints about bringing politics into everything, but I think this 25% tariff thing and the way Trudeau reacted to it is a prime example of why it's all interrelated. I mean, that is immigration policy impacting energy policy. It all gets mixed up in all of these political machinations between the two parties. Trump threw it out there as a proposal, in order to create exactly the reaction from Justin Trudeau that Trudeau had. Trudeau had such a great time at Mar-a-Lago, he spent an extra night there, right? So he was supposed to go back Saturday. He stayed over until Sunday before he went home. But that was exactly the kind of response. Yeah. And so he was hoping to create that kind of response so that Trudeau might take some quick action, and Trump can come into office and say, look, I'm not going to have to implement this 25% tariff on all these Canadian goods because the Trudeau government has done X, Y, and Z. And now the flow of drugs and illegal immigrants across the border is going to slow down dramatically. And the hope being, of course, that you never have to employ those tariffs. And but it was just a great example of why, I know people get frustrated that we often veer off into politics in these discussions, but it just, you have to, because these political games that get played impact energy policy in a very real way, and you can't escape it.
Well, policy is political, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And it varies so widely from administration in the US and will in Canada after this next election, vary so widely between the two changes in government, the two parties, that it becomes a really major impact on the industry and these companies that are in it. And you have to deal with it. You can't just ignore it. You have to deal with it.
Well, did you see yesterday where Trump said that if the BRICS go ahead with having their own currency, it would be like 100% tariff on stuff? I'm like, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and again,
so bad.
Right. Yeah, and again, he's just trying to nip that process within BRICS in the bud. And
I covered that on my daily show with Michael Tanner, and the reason I put in there on the article that I put up on energynewsbeat.co, shameless plug, but I put that up on my podcast because I said if the Biden-Harris administration had not weaponized the U.S. dollar
Yeah.
criminally in horribly being a bully around the world, President Trump would not have had to come out in that way and try to protect the US dollar. Putin may be a bad guy, but Reagan went out and promised Gorbachev, said NATO will not add any more on there. Oh, by the way, they added 8 more countries and kept encroaching
right
that
up
way.
to the Russian border. Yeah.
Yeah, but
right.
what Trump is doing, I know, David, that's one of David's headlines, but just want to quickly say, well, tariffs, this sort of tariffs are basically sanctions by another name.
Yes.
I don't think he should be doing that. I don't think it's productive for the mighty dollar, really.
I
It
don't
might
either.
just strengthen their resolve. Not that they're going to do a common currency anytime soon, but yeah, let's leave that off until it's time.
No, but that's actually a really solid point. Maybe we do another episode about all that. Actually, you can fill a whole episode with that discussion.
I'd like to get Professor Strange on here. He is a cool cat. I'll reach out and see if he has time to hop on the Energy Realities podcast, because he was talking about some of that. He is a good guy on X. He is very, very sharp.
Yeah, what's his first name? I forget.
Let me find out.
Anyway.
So
Canada,
I've got. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, David.
Go ahead. You've got what?
No, go ahead.
You've got that video about how the Trudeau administration establishes energy policy in Canada.
And how it's actually working on it. This is the Canadian policies in action. Is this first clip?
That was
Hey, those are plastic bottles.
I love this.
Oh, that's funny.
Now, I'm going to look at that. This is actually me doing Christmas shopping.
Yeah.
Now, let me show you. This is actually what I think. This next one is actually what I think Chris Wright is going to be doing as he is working on the new energy policies. This is energy policies, good management from Chris Wright. That's how you manage your energy policy and EPA. Oh, by the way, Mr. EPA is Lee Zeldin. And then you're going to have Doug Burgum working on this project. And you've got Chris Wright. Now, this was the Biden-Harris. When we take a look at the Biden-Harris policy, they tried to go after everything. And this was the Biden-Harris policy.
Is that Jennifer Granholm, the squirrel?
Yeah, that's Jennifer Granholm. Okay. Oh my goodness. Now that is the way that they.
Wow.
So look at this poor old squirrel. I mean, don't you know he's like, I have got to get me one of them feeders. But you can see from the policies that we had the Canadian policies in action. we had the U.S. policies in action, and here we have the next generation of U.S. policies.
I had
And
a
what's
question.
interesting,
Go ahead.
what's interesting is that if you compare what the EU is doing, what the UK is doing, what Biden had been doing, it's exactly what Canada's doing. It's like there's all of this alignment in what they're doing to go towards net zero. And if I could just add something here, there's a really great economist named Robert Lyman who's written quite extensively about the economic implications of net zero for Canada. And sometimes he compares it with what the EU is doing, but he put a cost on it. And the estimates based on what Deloitte has been saying, what other economists have been saying, we're looking at over 5 trillion Canadian dollars to implement net zero in Canada. So all of these policies together, the impact and cost is like 5 trillion. And that doesn't take into account what are the benefits? I don't think there are that many benefits. And it certainly doesn't make a difference with respect to what the weather is or what climate is.
So, yeah, and that brings up the question, COP29 just ended in massive failure. They didn't achieve anything.
Except the carbon trading market that Irina talked about.
Right,
Oh,
the
yes.
carbon trading market, yeah, which is just a total scam, another international scam. A big grift. I guess the Biden family will get involved in it, but and the Gore family. So, there was a big piece in the Washington Post last Friday about the fact that it fell apart, and we're just now going to barge right through this 1.5 degree temperature scenario that the IPCC has been preaching about for the last 20 years. Do you think that failure of COP29 and the falling apart of that international commitment, because I think it has fallen apart, and I just don't, nobody even remotely believes we're on track to achieve any of that now. How do you think that reality now, we've entered into a new reality, does that impact where Canada's going to go on energy and climate policy?
That's a good question. I
mean,
mean,
will the leaders respond to reality is what I'm asking.
No.
Well, it's a question.
The only way reality sinks in is when everything is so ridiculously expensive that people are like, this is ridiculous. We can't do this anymore. And the UK has 5 years of this extremist government that keeps bringing in all these different things. And so, if some of the European countries are already starting to buckle, like the German citizens and some of the French citizens and so on. But, within the new EU Parliament is pretty much the same as the old one. And they figure they've got, a mandate to do this. And with respect to Canada, unless Poilievre gets a majority, I think it'll be very difficult to try to undo a lot of what's been put there, except if you say, look, the Supreme Court's ruled this legislation, that legislation, and the other ones are unconstitutional. Maybe we ought to not do something that's unconstitutional. So will the reality sink in with the UN falling apart? But see, the bureaucrats go in and then they renegotiate and they do all this stuff, and then they bring it forward to the leaders and they'll just repackage it under a different name. And okay, not leaders, but
not leaders. Okay, we can't use that
one. Yeah.
I don't know who that LinkedIn user was. So
it's
anonymous.
probably Travis Lynn. It's usually Travis Lynn who comes out as LinkedIn user.
Travis.
We love Travis.
Good point. Yeah. But it's really, I don't understand how they see Canadian non-leaders. They see what's happening in Germany. They see what's happening in the UK, where green policies are arguably more advanced. And they're not taking any note. They're not learning that lesson. They think it's going great. Is that it? They think this is the way forward, even if it includes a lot of pain for a lot of people. But we will prevail and the future will be bright. Is that how they think?
Yes.
Yes, I think it is.
Wow.
I think there's a large portion of them, of people who believe that, and then others who, of course, like you say, grift, who are looking to take advantage of the situation.
Obviously.
Like for example, Nissan, the CEO made an announcement last week saying they've got about 15 months before they're going to be bankrupt. Nissan.
What?
Yep. And it was because of their investment in the EV market and so on, and said, well, we underestimated the demand for hybrids versus EVs. Like, okay. But also because they have an arrangement with Renault and maybe Stellantis, I can't remember which one. So they form a sort of triumvirate and share costs and expenses and so on, and marketing maybe. And that agreement expires in 12 months. So is he trying to say, well, and Renault, I guess, has signaled they won't renew their arrangement. So is he looking to raise this flag in order to get a white knight to come in and take over what Renault is doing? I don't know. But
Maybe
after
just quit making EVs. Did you hear that the CEO of Stellantis just resigned?
No, I didn't.
Yeah,
Did that
he
happen
was
today?
one of the few very sane voices in the car manufacturing space, and now he's resigned because the Stellantis is in trouble like everyone
Well, of
else.
course they are.
And he
Yeah.
probably
Told
didn't
you.
want to say, "I
Yeah.
told you so,"
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
he
They
did.
didn't get the Biden buyout. I mean, excuse
Yeah,
me,
they did get
bonus.
the $6 billion payoff from Biden.
Yeah.
No, but Hunter did.
just yesterday there's a Canadian EV company called Lion Electric, and they make buses or something, and they were I think they were trying to put them out to cities and school buses and so on, and they're teetering on bankruptcy. They haven't been able to pay their debt. The Quebec government has, I guess, given another bailout or something, saying, but they've laid off almost all their employees. And the thing is, those buses don't work.
And they don't work. Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
And so, but
this-
here's that does create a conundrum for government like Trump's coming in is, there's, obviously the Trump administration isn't going to favor more subsidies for companies like that. But by the same token, there's a lot of jobs involved, right?
Yeah.
And so you're going to end up with a lot of pressure coming on Chris Wright and these other appointees in the Trump administration to find a way to pour more money into failing companies like that to keep the jobs from going away. And that's going to be a really difficult conundrum for the Trump administration, for the Poilievre administration. If he gets elected, how do you balance all that? Because, it's all, I mean, those people, they have jobs because of these Biden programs. And yeah, the programs were bad ideas. They're ruinous financially. They're leading these companies to bankruptcy. At the same time, do you really want 5,000 employees going onto the unemployment rolls? And it's a very real dynamic that everybody's going to have to deal
with. And a
with.
lot of those jobs went to Republicanarians, David. And
that's right.
This,
yeah.
Which was the point.
This LinkedIn user, Exxon's president protested loudest at first. Reminds me of Trump's promise in 2016 to shut down the ethanol mandates. I'm writing about that for Chris, and I'm trying to get to Chris Wright and Doug Burgum and Lee Zeldin this paper because it is important. That brings up a fantastic point. You've got the agricultural system feeding ethanol, which takes more power. I went from my lake house to Texas, and in 7 hours, if I use non-ethanol, it saves me 2.5 miles per gallon not to use ethanol. Yeah. I don't like ethanol. It is expensive. And also,
it's hard on your engines. And you can't, it doesn't store well, and it's got a lot of moisture in it. Yeah.
Right.
Yep. I predict that they will claim carbon credits as a financial savior of the carbon institutional complex. I think that's a great comment. I think Occidental Petroleum, who was bought by a big chunk of it by Warren Buffett jumps in when he sees federal dollars rolling into things, and that's why he has been so very profitable. And he said, I wouldn't invest in a wind farm unless there was tax subsidies.
Well,
So
of
when you
course.
take a look, big oil is in trouble without those subsidies for their carbon credits, because that's what Occidental has really set themselves up for.
Yeah, and Exxon's going big into carbon capture, and and hydrogen, and there's that tax credit that benefits those kinds of projects. And so that's, I guess, what the LinkedIn user was referring to about Exxon's president protesting Loudism first. Everybody wants to preserve that enhanced tax credit that was in the IRA. Some of the specific subsidies, not so much.
You mean the Porculus bill? Was that the Porculus bill?
Well, I mean, one of the problematic aspects of these kinds of things is that the governments are telling these companies that this is the direction of travel. This is what they have to do in order to stay in business. So, they go to the Exxons and the Shells and the Suncors and say, if you want to be able to keep producing, you have to invest in carbon capture. You have to do this, you have to do that. And like one of the things that when the Canadian government announced this emissions cap, they said, look, these companies are making profits. So instead of paying out their investors, which happen to be pension plans and everything else, they should take all that money and invest it in carbon capture. And then that will make everything okay, and they'll be able to stay in business. And the thing is, what's a company supposed to do? They're caught between a rock and a hard place. They're being told by governments they have to do this to be able to keep producing. But then when there's a change in government, they're told, well, actually, maybe we don't want to do that anymore. So, I feel bad in some ways that companies are faced with that situation. But part of the problem is that they never really push back when it was being proposed in the first place.
They don't. They just take it lying down. And that's a big problem.
Yep.
And then they complain that it's there's too much uncertainty. Well, politics is uncertain.
Yeah. Be more active. Do like Chris Wright. He was the only one to speak out.
He was the only one.
Climate alarmism. Yeah.
Yeah. And, Brian Zinchuk had some great points here about all this investment in Canada for wind. And he has his first post comment was they have 1,722 wind turbines that produce 0.007% of their output on Sunday, because it was like a Dunkelflaute, and 0.39 megawatts of nameplate capacity, which was 5,476. So
Patrick is asking what happens with the carbon that's caught. They put it underground.
Yeah, they put it underground, supposedly keep it there.
Yeah. Sometimes they turn it into like a limestone or something, I think, where they put it in and they turn it into a kind of stone. And
it's also used in some of it's used in oil production when they try to put it back in the CO2, or you put it into coke.
We don't talk about that. We don't want that. We want it not used for enhanced oil and gas recovery.
Then, so do we ban totally cokes, and do we ban Tom, we love you. Tammy, we agree with Tammy too. Tammy is the hip around on that one. But do we ban cokes, because CO2 goes into making of cokes and sodas, right? Okay. Oh, look at Tammy. She's like, oh no, what's your favorite Coke, Tammy?
I don't drink fizzy drinks. I just drink carbonated water. But that's what I thought is like. So if I have a Soda Stream or something, if I'm using it, oh no, I'm using CO2. This is bad.
Yeah.
Well, so you're single-handedly supporting the carbon credits, right? Just kidding. Okay, let's go to the stories here. We're running right along here.
Yeah,
And
we're
David
fine.
Blackman is first up. First
Oh,
around
well,
the corner.
so the first one we've already talked about, the Trump threatening the 100% tariff on any BRICS country that continues this move to displace the US dollar as the currency of mark in foreign trading, with a status it's had since shortly after World War One, more than a century. And, Trump will move to protect the dollar. I think there's no question about that. Biden would have just tried to figure out what was in it for him. But Trump doesn't need the money. So the
Snap.
second one is, and again, the whole idea behind him throwing these things out now, 7 weeks before he takes office, is to cause those other countries to react and move away from trying to displace the dollar, so that those tariffs never get implemented. That's the whole idea behind it. Biden tosses Rivian a $6 billion lifeline. This is the Biden Energy Department led by Jennifer Granholm just trying to shove that IRA money out the door.
Yep.
Rivian has been on the verge of bankruptcy for 2 years now. They sold 37,000 cars at a per unit loss of $107,000 per unit this year. And yet
Wow.
Biden's given them $6 billion to build. They already have one plant capable of building 150,000 cars per year. That's in Illinois. Now they want to build a plant in Georgia capable of turning out 400,000 units every year for $6 billion. Well, why does a
Wow.
company that sells barely 30,000 cars a year need 400 or plants that are capable of putting out 550,000 cars a year? It's a make work program. It's like being on the dole during the Great Depression. Okay, this is a make work program to create a bunch of
That's a-
jobs that aren't going to do anything, and we got to stop this crap. Anyway,
And that's
mine.
for
Well,
the unions.
Amazon
that's for
owns 18% of Rivian.
Yeah. Why didn't Jeff
Because I
Bezos
think
put
they
$6
bought a
billion
bunch of their
in?
little trucks or something for.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
So
And so
Amazon
my
couldn't.
proposal is for Jeff Bezos to put the $6 billion into Rivian.
Yeah.
If he thinks it's such a good investment.
Yeah, he's got lots of money. Why didn't he just?
Anyway, that story pissed me off, and that's why I wanted to put it in there.
Well, and we want David happy. And Tammy, you sent this out on our group chat this morning, and I really appreciated this. This was another Canadian thing that you brought up, and holy smokes, this will cost a lot of problems.
Yeah, so there's a trucker that goes on this blog that I follow, and they found this little thing that was released a few days ago, where the Environment and Climate Change Canada is changing the greenhouse gas regulations again, and they basically want to say that all big rigs have to be automatic, and that somehow this is going to save emissions. And I'm like, why? Why would you want to make all big rigs automatic? And yeah,
I
so
thought
Gordon
there were a
McGill
couple
has his own
reasons.
theory.
The theory is sound. Why would you want to do that? I'll say it so you don't get in trouble. How's that?
Okay.
If they show up on my doorstep, they will be met with So there is a theory behind that. And why would you want to put automatics into big trucks that don't work well with automatic transmissions and cost gas mileage and break down more? And it's because the drivers don't know how. The new imported illegally drivers would not know how to handle shifting gears as well.
Yeah.
Oh, so your illegal aliens could be then finding jobs on transmissions. That is pretty evil thought.
Yeah. I don't know. That's a theory. I
It's a
really don't
theory.
understand how they think that this is more fuel efficient, that will lower emissions and everything
It's
else.
not.
But I don't know. It's stupid. I don't
It's not gonna
understand.
happen.
It's a new thing.
Sorry.
So that yet another piece of legislation that a future government will have to consider repealing or whatever. Okay, my headlines. The
Before we
one
get
headline
banned.
is to the first one is Jay Goldberg, who talks about Northvolt bankruptcy, an ominous sign for politicians' EV gamble. In Canada, they're spending over 100 billion on the EV gamble, backing Northvolt, of course, in Quebec. And it's interesting because the Quebec minister, who's already put billions into this project, or maybe hundreds of millions, I can't remember which one it is, because there's so much money being thrown around. Said it's okay. The factory that they're building in Quebec is unaffected. This only affects their operations in Europe, in Sweden. So, Northvolt has received a lot of government money, but the only way they can keep going is to keep getting more government money. So how is that a good business proposition if you always have to have more government money just to keep going?
Yeah.
So once again, central planning, maybe not the best planners ever.
Maybe
As
Now,
we know.
Tammy,
So yeah,
I just want to say Otis Bird makes a great point. Sounds like some of the policymakers might have bought stock in transmission companies. Holy
Could
smokes, Batman.
Could
In the
have.
U.S.,
maybe.
AOC started at a negative, and she's only been in office, I think, 6 years, whatever the number is, and she's now worth $47 million. So yes, stock trading does happen. Yeah, go figure
She's
that out.
Really? 47 million?
Some number like that. I mean, but
Yeah.
then take a look at Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi
Yeah.
on her salary she is worth $147 million. Being a politician pays.
So let me get this straight. AOC, who wore that dress that said "tax the rich," I guess
Yeah.
she meant that for herself. I mean, is she sharing her newfound wealth? I'm
I
curious.
doubt it.
Yes, he's somehow worth $29 million now, being worth $160,000 when she got elected. How did that happen?
Yeah,
How'd that
amazing,
happen?
isn't it?
So,
Well,
okay, I just had one more story there really quick. Labor's net zero plan left in disarray after factory closure. This is in the UK. So Vauxhall makes these little these mini vans, delivery vans, white vans, whatever you want to call them. And this factory's been around for like 100 and some years, and they're closing it down because of the new EV mandates. And they're just going to have operations out of one of their factories instead, and they're updating it, whatever. And so now they're like, oh, maybe we shouldn't be moving so fast with the EV mandate if it means that these factories are going to close and put people out of business, or like lay off workers who would traditionally support labor, because labor is supposed to be the party of labor. And it turns out that they actually no longer help the people. They just do what the elites want and stuff. So now they're talking that they're going to extend the timeline for when only EVs are going to be able to be sold in the UK. So that's one thing.
Hey, Luca. Good to hear from you, Luca.
Hey,
good seeing you. Hey, I got one
Luca.
for you here, Tammy. I'm going to stay on this.
great
Gail
comment.
Campbell Andrus. Good morning. I am the CEO of Truck Sale Incorporated. We have patents and know how to reduce fuel consumption in large trucks and transport trailers. There are significant fuel savings and therefore reductions in pollution. We love that, and have not received funding to support our project except some R&D tax credits, which she's grateful. Our products make business sense and reduce the operating costs for trucking companies. See, that to me makes sense, that we spend our money there instead of other places.
I just want to thank Gail Campbell Andrus for separating the concepts of CO2 from real pollution.
Yeah.
Because they are
Took it
different.
right out of my mouth, David.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Indeed. It's a very important distinction. It's great to see someone from the business world make it.
Yeah, except in Canada, they call CO2 pollution.
But it's not just in Canada.
Yeah.
Hey,
It's all over
hey,
the
Gail.
media.
Yeah, reach out to us. I'd love to visit with you and even possibly scheduling on my podcast as well. And since I'm the least fun one here, I'm the most serious. This one, LinkedIn user, when all the current wave of EV batteries, wind farms, and solar farms wear out at the same time in 20 years, we will learn new terrible terms like peak metal, peak minerals, and peak money. I
Yeah.
think it's
Yeah.
going to be worse than that, Mr.
We're
LinkedIn
already
user.
on big metal, big
Oh,
minerals.
it is
Good point, Irina.
already
Yeah.
really, really bad. And it's Irina.
Oh yeah, two funny stories. First of all, Europe's gas storage empties at fastest rate since 2016. And they thought they had avoided the crisis. No, it would just delay, you idiots, because we got lucky for 2 winters in a row. And it was because of the weather. But now the
Yeah.
weather is normal and winter is normal. And a wonderful reader of my Substack sent me a link to Gas Infrastructure Europe, a well-hidden link where you can actually see the level of storage in each country. Denmark is yellow, which is, risky. It's too low to be green. Germany is green and most of Europe is green. But if you look at the difference between injections into storage and withdrawals, it's like for Germany, it was like 25 terawatt hours in injections versus over 800 terawatt hours in withdrawals.
Yikes.
This, I'd like to say, is unsustainable. And it's going to get worse because this is the beginning of winter. We still have late December and January, which tends to be the coldest, at least in this part of the world. And they're going to fire up all these coal and, where available, gas power plants just to keep the lights and the heating on. And they might fail. And they
Big
should.
surprise.
Yes, and they should, for people to wake up and stop treating it as something that doesn't concern them. Because this is what the great majority of Europeans have been doing, except French farmers and all other farmers that went out in numbers to protest stupid laws. But yeah.
I love
Okay.
their protest. I love their protest guns that they do. Their poo guns. Holy smokes, those are wonderful.
Yeah, and the second story is even funnier because I remember this minister Wilkinson when Scholz of Germany went to negotiate an LNG deal, and it was Trudeau and this little guy who said that we're not interested in developing an LNG industry in Canada. No, so we're not.
There's no business case. They said there's no business case.
LNG. Thank you, Tammy. Yes, those were the words. Yeah. And now he's basically incoherent. There were quotes in this Reuters report, and all he was talking about was talking. We should have robust conversations, and we should talk about talking. Basically, this was his message. As if he was scared to mention the words oil or gas, thinking that readers would fail to grasp what he's talking about, which is oil and gas, and the fact that he's worried about the Trump tariffs. It's really pathetic, and I'm sorry these people are in charge of Canada.
I agree.
I'm done.
But what's interesting is that the Premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith, she recently joined, it was the first foreign government, joined the American Governors for Energy Security. And it's a coalition, I think, of 16 governors and Alberta to ensure that there's energy security. And she, when they announced the emissions cap, said, we will negotiate directly with the United States if that's what it takes. We'll bypass Ottawa. I don't really know how they'll do that because constitutionally they can't, but Quebec's already set a precedent for doing something similar, so we'll see.
Yes, I was going to ask you about this, by the way. She invoked some law that Alberta recently passed that they can actually say that what the federal government is doing is unconstitutional, so we'll do what we want, basically, as far as I understood. Is
right,
that
because Yeah, the Canadian Constitution has Section 92A, which allows natural resource development is purely in the space
Right.
and responsibility of the provinces. And so I think it's called the Alberta Sovereignty Act,
Yeah.
where they will double down on their constitutional responsibilities with that they believe Ottawa is contravening. So
It
we'll
sounds
see.
great. I hope it works.
I hope it works too.
Cool. And I'll tell you, I want to give a shout out to all of our folks that are listening on the podcast around the world. And if I miss you, I apologize. This is an awesome chat. Irina is awesome. Let's hear for Irina,
I'm
everybody.
just angry.
Yay, Irina.
No, I absolutely love Irina, and I love Tammy and love David, and I am absolutely thrilled. Gail also brought up there's also many great jobs for these types of project. I incorporated in Canada, believing these types of innovations would be supported, including by investors. Investors in the US are interested, but it looks like there's reluctance to invest in Canadian companies. Since there's a business case for truck sale products, it looks like our opportunities are in the US, not only for business, finding this to be the case. Again, Gail, reach out to me. I'd love to interview you on my podcast. Or either the others might want to do that as well, or you could sponsor the Energy Realities podcast and get your story out there. For anybody else wanting to sponsor the Energy Realities podcast, have a great
If
day.
I could,
oh, sorry.
Can I add to Gail's comment there? Because this is what happens a lot in Canada, is that the investors don't want to necessarily invest in operations in Canada. And we end up having to go to American investors or open up a shop in America in order to get the investment, because they're more risk taking. They're more interested in developing new things. Whereas in Canada, there's so many regulations and everything that it just, in some ways, it's a benefit to be so close to the United States that Canadians can actually find investment money to do things, because it's like that's where ideas go to happen, instead of, unfortunately in Canada, where they're bogged down by red tape like crazy.
Cool. I like it. Norway is bipolar in like kind. I like that. Canada is schizo about like Al Gore owning Occidental while spouting his nonsense. But we've had a lot of fun today. I'll tell you, on the two stories that I have, which we're running out of time, and thank goodness nobody wants to hear me blather. Hit the panic button why UK's electric car mandate is crashing. I think this was a funny story. And since I can speak, because I welcome anybody from the UK trying to arrest me over a post, please make my day. Show up on my doorstep to arrest me from the UK. What are net zero emissions targets? This article was really, really funny. I mean, it goes all the way through it. It was on Yahoo News. And it's on energynewsbeat.co. As why are car makers hitting the panic button this year? Poor demand for EVs mean manufacturers have struggled to meet the government targets and now left with difficult choice. Here, this brings up our whole point. And Tammy, you and I and David were talking before this, and the other story I'm just going to throw over there and say hydrogen. And the whole thing behind that is, Tammy, I think hybrids would be a fantastic way to get extra mileage if they're done right. Toyota has done a phenomenal job leading the world in their hybrids. But didn't you just rent one?
Yeah, we rented one, and not on purpose. It was the only vehicle they had in that class or whatever. And it was a hybrid. And every time we pressed the sort of EV button, it would say there wasn't enough power. And once we'd been driving for a while, because I guess it would charge from it wasn't a plug-in hybrid, but it would charge from the use of the engine, I guess, normally. And so finally we tried it when we were on these back roads or whatever, and there was a bit of an incline, and we pressed the EV button. We got 2 minutes. Got 2 minutes.
Aren't they
Motor.
supposed to be the better kind of hybrids because the battery charges while the internal combustion engine runs?
Right.
I
Yeah.
know.
So
I know.
it's
I
supposed
like
to-
it. It's a unique engine formulation or something that they were talking about. It's unique compared to how Toyota does it. It was, I don't want to name the brand, just in case, but
In
it was,
case they want to ever sponsor the show.
yeah. I'll write about it on Substack, because then I can go into more detail about the experience, which I will never buy one of these ever.
Yay.
Hey, hey, somebody complimented today, guys. This is unusual. Wow. Yay. Way to go, David. David always gets it. Here's Janet. I've always had a hybrid since 2006. Man.
I'm sure it's not
You
the
must have a
same
good one.
make and model.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tammy.
I
mentioned.
think
I like
that
hybrids too.
Yeah, I do too.
Never
whoever
been-
makes the best truck hybrid will win. I want. I'm going to have a 350 and a Tesla Cybertruck just to get all my crap that I have to haul around on my land. And so, do I get to buy a $100,000 Cybertruck and a Ford 350? I don't know.
Tom Mumford makes a great point about the hybrids. He likes redundant systems. Hybrids make a lot of sense. Yes, exactly.
They do.
Exactly.
Apparently, if they're done right.
Right. Yeah.
So-
Except for the one Tammy rented on her vacation.
Yeah, it was bad. It was really bad. Well, Lexus is owned by Toyota. So
Yes.
I'm not
Oh.
surprised.
Toyota
Nobody
knows
does
how
it better
to
than Toyota.
Yeah,
hybrids.
Toyota.
Toyota. Yep.
But
Toyota's
they've
got it now.
invested quite heavily into developing the hybrid technology. So
Yep. Tammy, how do people find you, and how do people subscribe to your stuff?
the nemethreport.com is my website, where I link to this show and my own podcast and other writings. And I'm on Substack, but I haven't written a post yet. So I think the
Well,
CV experience will be the one,
go.
the inaugural.
And Irina, you are Irina, and what is your Substack?
It's Irina's Love on Energy, but I'm thinking of changing it. I might have to go incognito since I'm in the European Union. But for now, I'm Irina's Love on Energy. Well, you never know. You never know.
Oh, yep. I think Tammy, hear from Tam and Tom. We love Tom. Have a good week, folks. Thank you. And David Blackman, how do people find you?
Blackman.substack.com. Everything I do gets linked or reposted there.
All right. And I steal all of it. My name's Stu Turley, and I'm on energynewsbeat.co or the energynewsbeat.substack.com. I'd like to thank all of the listeners today. And also, if you want to get your word out, just like Gail Campbell Andrus was bringing out, we have a significant reach on this podcast. And if you want to sponsor us, please let us know, because we got reach between the four of us. Believe it or not, we got reach. Have a great week, guys. We'll see you all
Thanks,
soon.
everybody.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
hosting, Stu.
Bye, y'all.
And thanks for the comment. Bye-bye.